Today my guest is Charles Stacy Harris III. Stacy, how are you, sir?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming back to the show.
Good. My pleasure to be back.
And we're here in the Microsoft Technology Center, the MTC, right?
That is right.
Which is where you work.
That's where I work, the MTC.
What is the MTC?
Wow. So the Microsoft Technology Center is a center where we help customers solve business problems. We help them with understanding what their business problems are, business needs are, how we can apply technology to solving those problems.
Give me an example.
Okay, I'll give you an example. We actually have 3 different kinds of offerings here. Those that are our main offerings. We do a lot of other things as well, but our main things are things, one which we call a strategy briefing. So for example, a strategy briefing would be bringing in the business decision makers, bringing in people who are maybe the line people who actually understand what the business problem is, and possibly bringing in some of the IT people who are going to help solve the problem. We spend a day in the strategy briefing. The first part of the day, we go through a process which is what we call mutual discovery. Mutual discovery is us asking a lot of questions and the customer doing a lot of talking. So for example, a customer may come in and say, well, we have a problem with our engineering process is too slow. The process of doing changes, this is too slow for us, we need to speed it up. And we start to go through and understand, okay, well, what's the process? What does it look like? What are the pieces involved? So that mutual discovery really leads us to a deeper understanding of the business problem. And then we will go and take the customer into what we call our envisioning center, which maybe we'll take a look at that later.
Yeah.
The envisioning center is where we actually show a solution. We show how another company, in this case a fictitious company, has solved similar problems to what they have. But it's like Disneyland. You'll see, it's pretty impressive.
Well, so show them using software and applications, or with whiteboards and PowerPoint?
No, we show them with actual software.
Okay.
We've actually built a fictitious company. We have in our server room, when you came into the center, you saw the server room. We'll show you that. We have about 45 virtual machines running this fictitious company. It's called Southridge Video and Electronics. It has an Active Directory with all of the employees. It has a SharePoint with documents. It has SQL databases. It has business intelligence capabilities. So all of the things that you would need to run a business are actually running in there. Real live software, not mock-ups, not demoware,
right,
but actual shipping software. The only thing fictitious is the data, is the company.
Right.
So that's it, and we'll go and show, based on that mutual discovery, we can pick and choose paths through our sort of almost, you could call it a demonstration, but it's so much more.
Right.
We pick and choose paths to show them. So if the customer's really focused on sharing Office documents or being able to collaborate in online meetings, we can show them that.
Right.
So that's kind of what the first thing. I mentioned there are 3. The 2 others. One is an architecture design session. And once we've spent that day with the business people, and we know now we have a problem that we want to solve, and it's maybe a deeper problem, we bring in the technical folks. And we spend usually about 2 days, they could go longer, but usually about 2 days, deep dive with those technical people. That's where we spend a lot of time at the whiteboard. And we actually have purpose-built rooms for these things. So the strategy briefing is a big boardroom kind of setting. The architecture design session is a session where there are a lot of whiteboards in the room, all around the room, and you can collaborate on whiteboards or smart boards or things like that, and really dive into an architecture for solving the problem, either from an IT side or development side. And then the last offering, and I'll stop rambling so much, but the last offering is what we call a proof of concept lab. So the proof of concept, that's going to be something usually around 2 weeks. Some are shorter, some are a week. It's possible they could go longer, but about 2 weeks, where we have rooms similar to the ones that are next door to us. We'll take a look at those that are full of developer workstations. We provision virtual machines or actual hardware in our server area, secured access to those, secured access to the room, so key card access to the room, and we bring those customers in and we spend 2 weeks developing a proof of concept. So actually working through and working through either the most difficult parts of the problem or potentially the parts of the problem that are going to help sell the solution to their business internally.
Okay. Now, is this something that you're charging for, or is this something you're using to sell other things?
So we don't charge for it at all. The goal of the center is to make our customers successful using Microsoft software. So we want customers, especially our large enterprise customers, but really all of the customers. Our focus typically is going to be the large enterprise customers,
Yeah.
but we bring in anybody. We bring in other businesses as well, but we want them to be Microsoft customers for life.
Right.
So the center really focuses on their success, on solving their problems, and not so much on whether we're selling them a particular piece of software. We like, for them to buy Microsoft software in the end because we believe we're going to have the right solution, but that's really not the focus of those engagements, and the engagements are free of charge.
Okay. Yeah, I've worked in a lot of large enterprise companies, and I have to believe that one of the big pain points is not so much the Microsoft software itself, it's integrating that Microsoft software with other vendor software. Somebody else has an identity provider, somebody else has the document store or their database or
Sure, absolutely.
their services. Is that something you're helping people out with a lot?
Yeah, we do. So we have a lot of what we call competitive knowledge. And sometimes it's competitive knowledge, sometimes it's partner knowledge, depending on who's selling the software and everything.
Right.
But we have a lot of knowledge of non-Microsoft software and non-Microsoft hardware as well. And yeah, so we do help integrate what Microsoft provides with what the customer may have from other vendors.
Okay. Tell me about some of the tools that you used. You said you've got some rooms with giant whiteboards, and you've got meeting rooms. You've got the 40-some virtual machines with the sample company on. What else is there?
Yeah, so I think those are some of the main things. The purpose-built rooms are really they're gold because they rooms like the one that we're in now, which is actually a room where we demonstrate how to do collaboration. So this is our immersion center of sorts, where you can come in and learn how to do things like you get hands-on provisioning SharePoint sites, hands-on doing calls using Link, which is our collaboration IP telephony and meeting software. So things like that. That's sort of gold. The platinum, the thing that's even more precious is the people. Mm-hmm. We have what we hope will be the top technical talent in the center here. So the best of the best come into this center to help out, and where we may not have the expertise, we bring it in.
Right.
So we bring it in either physically or virtually. We can do in every room. You'll see things like the round table device, which there's one across the room from us, but it's a 360-degree view camera integrated right into the room, so that we can do these link calls to experts that may not be on premise with us, and people can get that immersive experience of being in a conference call by seeing that 360-degree view of everyone who's there. So we have things like that, and other tools. I mean, it's.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's go look at it. Is that all right?
Sure. Let's do that.
You guys want to come? Let's go.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the room we were just talking in, and here's the camera, the 360 camera.
This is the round table. This is actually a very cool little device. It has a little privacy screen on it. But when you take the privacy screen off, what you notice is that there are 6 cameras around and little mirrors. And what the software does is stitches together a 360-degree view from all of those cameras. So when you're in the meeting and you're seeing the remote video, so say I'm in a remote location and I'm watching this participating in this call, I can see a view of everyone who's in that room. Now the other kind of interesting thing is that there are microphones all around, and what we do is the software will follow the speaker. So if I'm speaking, then you're going to see not only 360-degree view, but you'll see my face in sort of a main window, all right, and the 360-degree view under that. Then when you start to talk, software automatically just toggles so that now you're in the main focus, and you still get that panoramic view, but now the remote participants are seeing you on the screen.
Very cool. Reminds me of the Jedi Council meetings.
Yeah, it is. Well, and we even go a little bit further than that. You'll see, so with Avatar Connect, I mean that's even more the Jedi Council. Yeah, so that's the round table.
All right, what's your next?
Well, let's actually start up front. I think when I head on out this way.
You mentioned this. This is where your 40-odd virtual machines are. Right?
Yeah. So over here you'll see some Dell servers, and the Dell servers are running about 45 virtual machines. Things like a SQL Server, and SharePoint, and things like that. So all of those virtual machines go to power our fictitious small business, and a few other things too. But that's kind of what those are. And we also have some additional servers here, some Dell 910s. We have 2 servers that are 64 core, 256 gigs of RAM each. So fairly robust kinds of servers. And they actually, if you look back at previous generation servers, it would have probably taken about 25 or 30 servers to do what those 2 servers can do today. So we would have had a lot more.
2 physical servers.
Yeah, 2 physical servers.
40 some virtual servers.
Yeah, and those are those actually will run things like our POC labs for those 2 Dell servers. Those run the POC labs. We also have some additional servers in case say a customer comes in and they want to run some software. They don't want to run a virtual machine. They rather want it on bare metal. Then we can get it on bare metal as well. And then next thing you see here's some storage. This is EMC storage.
And these are just hard drives.
These are hard drives, and the hard drives. So actually, I can bring up some statistics for you, but I think we have about 240 terabytes of EMC storage, and of that, about 50 terabytes are on SSD, and then the rest is a lot of it's SCSI as well. Yeah, I think the rest of it actually may be SCSI. I don't remember the exact numbers of how much is partitioned where.
Right.
But that's the EMC storage. So that's storage that we can use when we're doing proof of concept work, if we need a huge amount of storage, large databases. We can actually run 3 different proof of concept labs at once. The room that we were in earlier used to be a POC lab. We decided to change it into that immersion experience kind of room. So we had 4, now we can run 3 POCs at once. So if you need a lot of storage for those, sure, it's kind of handy. And as we get down here, I'll show you some additional storage as well. The other thing is the center, we try to be a bit green here, as green as we can. So you see here, this is essentially a heat exchanger. The way that we cool these servers is by exchanging heat with the outside. So we essentially are pumping fluid up to the roof, and especially in the winter that's nice because we can exchange with ambient air. We get a lot of sort of natural heat exchange that way. So when it's cooler in Michigan, and when it's cold in Michigan, about 8 months of the year.
It's cold today, but it's been warm lately.
9 months of the year. But yeah, so that's really a very helpful thing to be able to cool sort of naturally. Then as we go down the way here, you see some additional devices. There's a Shunra networking appliance here. That gives us capabilities for doing things with things like WAN emulation, changing network speeds and things like that, creating virtual networks, all kinds of cool stuff like that. The other device you see here, you notice the one that's sort of white. Hopefully that'll show up okay on the camera. But that's a caching appliance by a company called Store Simple. And what it does is it actually allows a company to say, well, we want to build out a storage infrastructure in the cloud, but we want to have some local caching. So this thing will use Windows Azure storage, and you can push large amounts of data out to Azure, but still have some amount of that on-premise and have really fast access to it. Interesting. And yeah, it is kind of cool. And it also does things like encryption and deduplication of packets, so you get very efficient storage in the cloud as well, and very secure storage.
It's built into the firmware of this, or that's some custom software?
It's built into the firmware of this. Yeah, so it's very easy to actually start using this appliance. You can configure it to essentially just look like a really large drive and just start using it. And you can apply certain rules and things up as to how things get cached in the cloud when they get cached in the cloud. And one of the other kind of things is you walk around the center, you notice next to each room there's a little display. And we thought this was kind of a neat touch. All of the rooms are named after inventors or innovators of some sort. And below each, we put together a little sort of slideshow about each person. So as you're coming in, you can learn a little bit about it. And if a customer's using the room, then we actually put the customer's logo and a little welcome message there. So this is our training room. And that is Rick Bruce. Rick, you are going to be on television. The training room is just that. We bring in folks, we teach them all kinds of things. Rick is working on some SQL training. We've done development training. I actually had an embedded development class in here for minority students, which was kind of fun. We brought in some of the best and brightest minority students in this area, taught them to do some embedded development on that micro framework with these little robots. And I think we had the robot on the previous show. And they just were amazing. They were able to.
They're high school students.
High school students. Excellent. Yeah, they were able to. In about an hour, they learned the basics of it and had the robots going, and then we gave them little robot kits to take home. So that was kind of fun. But that's the idea behind this is training for customers, training for the community, those types of things. All right. So this is the Leonardo da Vinci room. This is that sort of boardroom that I talked about, where we would do a strategy briefing. So we bring in the business decision makers, executives, those types of people. People who know what the business problems are, right, and really understand them deeply, because that's where we want to start. We don't want to start with technology. We want to start with what's your business need, what problems are you facing, and then figure out the technical solution. Right. Because we want people to be successful, and we think that's the only way to really do it.
I agree.
If we jump in with the technology, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if you jump in with the technology and it's not the right thing, they're not going to trust you.
The answer is X. What's the question?
Yeah,
that doesn't work.
Yeah, that doesn't work. Now the answer is yes, that might work, but the answer is X. No, I don't know. So that's what this room is about. You also notice that in each of the rooms we have some really cool art.
Really nice art.
Yeah, in fact, that one's kind of nifty because you can see Mona Lisa and Leonardo in the picture. If you look at it just right, you see Leonardo in the background. I see Mona Lisa in the foreground. And this room also has an attached little kitchenette. When you bring execs in, when you bring the execs in, so you're going to have breakfast, lunch, things like that, and you don't want to have to kind of go way too far to do that. You get the power meeting going. You want to keep the power meeting going. So grab lunch, come back in, and just work. But that's.
And you got the sort of 360 camera here as well.
Yes, we do. And we also have Dave Sawyer. So Dave Sawyer is the technical director at our center.
Hi, how's it going?
So,
have you seen my show before?
I have not.
I'm just going to edit that part out.
Okay, all the time.
Huge fan.
Yeah, huge fan.
So Dave is responsible for all of the technology in the center, bringing it in, making sure that we have the right technology, and then if it breaks, we know who to blame.
So I think the analogy is they usually say is I'm like the chef in the back room. So if the food quality is great, nobody knows I'm there. If there's a problem with the food quality, I'm the person to blame.
Talk to the manager.
Yeah. So it's kind of a treat to have Dave along. And if you want to do a little more in the server area, Dave knows every wire in that room.
Do you have time?
Yeah, I do.
Come on, let's go.
Okay. What we do here is when we do a proof of concept, we have basically a large virtualization host, and that's what you see below with those two HP 580s. And each of those is a 64-core, 256 gig of memory server. And the idea is you could stack up your virtual machines on there. Each one is a Hyper-V host, and they're clustered so that we have fault tolerance. Now, we also have a C7000 blade center above there, And in the Blade Center, we have a mix of both Intel and AMD blades. And so the idea, if somebody's made a choice on one or the other, we can go ahead and simulate their environment. And this is where we would go ahead and load individual servers. If somebody said, hey, we want to do proof of concept, but we want to have an individual database server, or we want to have a web front end that's sitting out on the internet, we want to have that on a separate box, we could go ahead and do that if we needed to. And then here, we basically, on the 580s, we had the Intel side. We also have a set of 585s. This is a 4-processor box. Each one has 12 core in it. So these are 48 core boxes. And again, we use them as large Hyper-V hosts. The top 3 360s there, we're doing some fun stuff. We use them as both virtualization hosts, as well as doing some fun things like high-performance computing. I have one as a high-performance computing head node, and then one is a work node. Each of those is 24 core. And then I also took 4 of the high-performance workstations we have in our proof of concept room and added that to the cluster. So we could do some awesome engineering work if we needed to simulate some engineering applications running here. We could do that as well. Each of the racks basically has a switch in the top, and those switches actually tie back to our larger switch via 10 gig Ethernet. So we basically are starting to bring in some 10 gig Ethernet, and that's awesome. We also worked with a company called CommScope, a local company, and that's how we do our fiber switching. They actually have what's called an iPatch system, is what they call their thing. You can see it has a little console below it, so every time I plug a piece of fiber in, I actually know which endpoint that goes to. So when it comes to troubleshooting cabling issues, I now can go to their software and say, okay, port 4 goes to that HP server, and then it goes across, and it comes down, and it gets plugged into port 24 at our Brocade fiber switch. So a lot of times when you're working with a data center, if there's a problem with a cable, it becomes a nightmare of figuring out which cable it is and where is it going, and you have to kind of pull them all out and trace them. So this makes it a lot easier to do that.
Okay. That's a lot of hardware. All these 24 core machines here. Are you buying all this hardware?
Our partners, actually, we have 10 global partners, and they actually provide the hardware for us to go ahead and do this with the idea that somebody coming in to do a proof of concept sees the hardware, they get to use it, they experience what it's like, and then they would go ahead and implement the solution in a similar way to the way they did it here. So that was their thought behind that. We have another 45 gig of NetApp storage, which we basically can link in. And what's unique about this, I don't know if Stacy told you, is that there's no raised floor in our data center, and all of our cooling is done with water. We actually have a chiller up on the roof, and each of the racks has a sensor on the front of it, and the volume of the fan noise in there is determined based on how much cooling we're doing. When it's cooler outside, we don't have to run an air conditioner like you would normally. We actually just use an economizer, and we use the outside air to cool the data center, and that's better for the environment. So that's really what we have on the HP and the NetApp side, and pretty neat the way that works.
We took a little bit of a look earlier at the other side. We kind of stopped because there were some people walking by. We didn't really get into the networking equipment, so we kind of stopped right at the Store Simple.
Okay.
So if you want to talk about some of the other network equipment, is that
okay? This basically is our miscellaneous equipment rack, and it has some really neat things in it. One of the ones that's kind of nice is this blue Shunra WAN emulation appliance. A lot of times people will come in for a proof of concept and they'll say, we'd like to test out what that's like, but we have a location in Mexico or China, and we'd like to see what the experience would be. So they can bring us their speed and their latency. We can plug it in and we can actually simulate what a connection would be coming in from that site. And so this really helps us to get a realistic experience. Not everybody's running 10 gig Ethernet throughout their environment. A lot of times they're connected to remote locations, and so this allows us to simulate that. We have an F5 load balancer, which helps us to go ahead and simulate internet-based applications. We basically have a Polycom. We have a video border proxy up there, which helps us to connect to the internet. So in each of the rooms, we'll have some Polycom equipment, and we can actually work with technical experts in other MTCs, like in Chicago or Reston, Virginia, a variety of different places. They can come in and add some additional input to our sessions. And the other thing that we have on the bottom there is a Store Simple device. And this is kind of interesting. It's a virtualization appliance that virtualizes storage and basically uses the cloud to store data.
Yeah, we were
What
talking
you
a
would-
little bit about that one earlier and how we do deduplication and encryption of the data.
Sounds good. So the idea is that, here you have this. What's interesting about it is disaster recovery is very simplified because you can put an appliance somewhere else in the world. If there's an issue with a building level disaster, you log in, put in your encryption key, and you mount your volumes, and boom, your data's back. It's
Right.
sitting in Azure.
Right.
So we have there. On the networking side, all of our storage is connected in with a Brocade fiber switch. This basically shows you all of the cables running in and then out to the EMC and NetApp here and out to the individual servers. And on the networking side, basically what we have is top of rack switches, as we showed when we looked at the individual servers, and then this goes into our 5412 switch here, which basically, again, those are the 10 gate ports on the top, and then we basically fan that out and connect in to the other machines and ports throughout the center via 1 gate.